Welcome back to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Niall Stanage. New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani was grilled by CNN's Abby Phillip on his support for creating government-run grocery stores. Let's watch.
And why is the government a better solution for a lack of grocery stores, food deserts, than just working with the private sector to have them do what they know how to do, which is run grocery stores? What's your answer to that?
There are more than 1,000 grocery stores in New York City. I'm proposing creating 5 additional ones, one in each borough of New York City that the city would run, and that would guarantee cheaper groceries, not free food, but cheaper groceries. And part of that is because food is a necessity for New Yorkers. It's a necessity for everyone, and yet it's something that people are being priced out of. And we can see the promise and the possibility of a public option. And we've seen in studies that have been done about the applicability of this in an urban setting like Chicago, that this is something we can actually deliver right here in New York City.
But there was another example in Kansas City where they had a government-run grocery store, and it's been there for years, but it's on the verge of closing because it doesn't work. They've been riddled with crime. They've dealt with just a lack of inventory. There are other examples where it just hasn't worked because, frankly, the government is not that good at being in the business of being in grocery stores.
The Democratic Socialist also said he would support abolishing the NYPD's gang database, which is a tool for law enforcement to keep tabs on New York City gang members, suspected gang members, and their associates. Let's watch that.
If City Council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one that I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers on the basis of whether they go out late, photos they put on social media, so much of the facts of life of being a young New Yorker. And yet it then becomes a mark of suspicion. And it is a concern of mine that we do not live up to, of all people, Eric Adams's words in 2021, who said that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice. Mm-hmm. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
Let's start with the grocery stores, and then we'll circle back to the database. So this is not, even if we're going to concede that the government should do something in the case of people having difficulty affording food or getting groceries, a government-run grocery store would be the last way I would deal with this, because, to Abby Phillip's point, I agree that the government wouldn't generally be very good at that. You know, I would, if we're going to do something, I would rather just, write a check to people who need to do food stamp type thing or universal basic income type thing, and they can use that money for whatever food needs they have. New York has a lot of bodegas, right? Corner stores that they're all over the place. If you want to argue to me there's somewhere in the city where you have to walk a real long time to get to one, maybe that's the case. But this doesn't seem like the most egregiously awful policy ever, in that I think they'll try it and it won't work, and then they'll not do it, or they might not do it at all. But you're probably more positively disposed to it.
Much more so. As I suspected, this will be, I think, the issue that we disagree most vigorously on, because you start off, in my perspective, from the reality that there are a large number of people who are food insecure. They may not be starving, but they're having difficulty in providing for themselves in a basic way. You then get into the other realm, to your bodegas point, I used to live in New York City. I enjoy bodegas. I would not claim that they are typically places to get especially nutritious or good value food. There is a long-standing problem, as you know, with so-called food deserts, where, yes, there are places you can get food, but it's often fast food or canned food or stuff that is just not very good for you. So if you're going to say, look, the government should address that with one supermarket in each borough, and we will stock that supermarket with things that are obviously desired, but also things that are nutritious. And in doing that, we will both ameliorate the food desert problem and have a place where there is affordable food for people. I have no problem with that at all. Now, the Kansas City example, I don't know the specifics of. I was reading some of it just before our conversation. It's in an area which apparently is quite afflicted by high crime. That obviously doesn't necessarily lend itself to people going to that particular supermarket. But look, I don't think in any circumstance the failure of one example or one manifestation automatically disproves the overall theory. Like, we don't look at Enron and say, well, capitalism's a disaster. We think people are fraudulent, you know?
Yes, I don't know that Enron is a compelling example of capitalism at its finest. Look, I think the world, the universe, the dimension in which this is like a runaway success is just very unlikely. I can see so many issues. Like, if the prices are just basically equivalent to the other grocery stores, then it's not really going to make any difference. Then it's, well, why is the government doing it? Anybody could do it. If the prices are much lower than what the private market is offering, I could imagine it having shortages or being overwhelmed. Also, just opening 5 of them isn't really going to make a difference. Again, I would say, should this be run by the government? If the problem is that people don't have enough money, should we just, I prefer not to tinker with the market is generally my approach, because the market is generally better than the government at delivering goods, foods, and services. Now, there is inequality in our society, and if people don't have enough for whatever reason, well, A, I want to get rid of whatever regulatory barriers are in the way to building more supermarkets, and then B, welfare, and the first thing I'm going to eliminate if Robby had his magic, line item veto to get rid of all the government spending, I think just giving people money and letting them decide what they do with it. Because I don't like to tell people what to do. If you say that there aren't nutritious health options in these areas, but if that's not what people value, if people prefer the McDonald's is succeeding because that's what people want to buy, kind of like from a libertarian perspective, well, is it my business to tell them that's not what they should be eating? I don't know. I feel the same way about cigarettes and everything else. Like, I don't want to tax the shit out of those things because, well, your choices are your choices.
Yeah, no, I mean, so that I think gets into a more complicated area. I mean, for example, I'm not a huge fan of if you provide food stamps, then saying, well, you can buy this but not that with them. I think if people are on assistance, then they should still have freedom within that.
I'm actually with you on that because I find it too annoying to the grocery store owner, to the checkout people to go, you can buy this or that. That's just again, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's the government over managing the process, which I don't like.
Right. But to the point about just give people money, we're at a point where, in fact, far from just giving people money, the effort on Capitol Hill is to claw money back from people who are on what used to be called food stamps. It's now called some official name. And I think when people are struggling in or on the edges of poverty, then those programs should not be being cut.
The last thing I'll say on those programs, I know from my time in Michigan, the University of Michigan, the state of Michigan had a food stamps program. I think they called it a bridge card. Mm-hmm. And the amount of abuse was insane because not having an income as a student, you could qualify to get it, even if you are you come from exorbitantly wealthy statuses, and then people just using it to buy alcohol, which I thought was not the intention of the program. Let's do the database then briefly. Lindsay and I were arguing about this today on Rising, Lindsay Granger and I, and she was doing a good job of trying to kind of cause my libertarian revulsion at the
I thought we might find
security
common ground
state.
here.
I know, but then when Mamdani says if it's a database of who said, happy birthday to a suspected gang member on Facebook, I mean, that's public information anyway. I'm not going to say the police can't keep track of that. Right? I don't know. Maybe you know more about this database than I don't know.
Well, it just seems to me that he is obviously being painted by his critics as being soft on crime, always opposed to this database. There are valid reasons to oppose that database. There are about 16,000 people on it, and nobody really knows why. So you're being singled out for suspicion in a way that you can't rebut because you don't know what the accusation actually is. It's also 99% either black or Hispanic. And according to Jermaine Williams, who's the public advocate up in New York City, there are people as young as 13 on it. And this is why I thought, perhaps wrongly, that we were going to find some sort of common ground to put kids on a kind of watch list for undefined reasons that the NYPD, which has its own rather checkered history, has decided makes them possibly gang members or at suspicion of gang members. That does strike me as a very dubious infringement upon liberties.
If they are engaging in some action based on that, right? If they're routinely stopping or harassing or interacting with people who are on that list for no other reason than there's some social media connection to someone else, then certainly I would say, well, no, I want people's civil liberties respected. I oppose stop and frisk because of its routine nature, disconnected from any individual suspicion of that person. So I'm against all of that. So possibly I'm against this in theory. I just think, even though I'm very for privacy, I think sometimes people put if you put the information about you out there on social media or whatever, there's not necessarily an expectation of privacy anymore, even versus the police or anyone else. Something I am learning in my personal life as photos of mine keep getting published in gossip newspapers and magazines, which is annoying, but is the life we live in the social media era.
Becoming a tabloid fixture. Look, I do broadly take the point. I mean, if you're posting things publicly, it's a grey area for me. Like the government scrutiny of that isn't something that I like, but I don't necessarily think it's an outrage. There are other suggestions that people are being put in this database because they live in particular housing projects where gangs are well represented or something like that. And I think the opacity of the reasons why people are on it is a real problem because you're just you're a dragnet, I think was the term Mamdani used. You're casting this very wide net for no good reason.
It's not just police officers sitting around on Facebook like little girls going, "Oh my God, can you believe Jones has unfriended Niall? Exactly. Oh my God,
what do we do about that on our gang database?"
Maybe not the best use of police resources.
Exactly.
More free media right after this.